Super exciting. So thank you so much for doing this interview, and I'll let you take it from here. All right. Hi guys, how's everybody doing? Good. I'm Gigi Sugan, as Jackie said. I'm the visual editor of Colorado Biz Magazine. We are statewide, we cover all sorts of industries, all sorts of really cool people, such as Josh. So we're lucky enough to be talking today with Josh Dorkin. And he is the CEO and founder of a company called BiggerPockets that's based here in Denver. Show of hands, have you guys all heard of BiggerPockets? Okay, good number of you, cool. Well then you would know that it is the largest community resource online for real estate investing tips and sharing, information, content, etc. Kind of cool to take something tangible like real estate and disrupt the industry online. So yeah, Josh, to get us started, I would love to hear, you started the company back in 2004. So before that, what were you doing?
So prior to 2004, hi, by the way, thank you for coming, guys. Really appreciate it. Prior to 2004, I had bounced around. Post-college, I was a prop trader, a stock trader. From there, I ended up in the entertainment business. I was an actor briefly, not very good. I ended up on the production side of the film business, which ended up bringing me out to California. And I realized that the business in California was really very different than New York. I didn't like it. There was just tons of bullshit. Like, don't do well with bullshit. And I was done. I couldn't deal. I ended up getting a real estate license and realized, again, that wasn't actually for me. There were a lot of factors. The timing, this was 2001-ish. The market in California, 2001, 2002, the market in California, I was a residential agent, was getting really, really hot. Prices were going up ridiculously fast. There were all these crazy loans, and I'm hearing about police officers who are buying $1 million houses. And when you hear about, do they deserve them? Yes. But when you hear about police officers buying $1 million houses, you know there's a problem. So I had an issue in that a lot of the clients that were coming to me were really not qualified to get into the homes that they were buying. And I said, I don't know that I want to be part and parcel to this. So I stopped. I got out of the business. And then I had actually gotten a substitute teaching credential. That's young 20s, you don't know what you're doing, you're trying to figure it all out. And one day this girl turns to me and, who I've been dating, and she says, hey, listen, we need somebody to come and fill in. I was like, oh, cool, my first teaching job. So I go in and go into the school, and that day the teacher I came in for quit. I ended up working there for 4 years. I had a full-time job that day. I ended up working for 4 years, and the lady in the back, my wife Julie, was my boss. So we, of course, got married, and 4 years later, I actually ended up quitting that job because BiggerPockets had started to take off, and we can define what take off means. It didn't mean a lot back then. But that was really everything that I did prior to BiggerPockets. It was, I had bounced around, done a few random gigs in between, but always was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I knew that I was not, even though I worked for my wife, I was probably not the best of employees. I was always somebody who just wanted to kind of run the show and take leadership and take charge. And I think some people are just built that way.
So how did the idea for BiggerPockets then come to be? Through all this experience, was it sort of cobbled together, or was there a lightning bolt moment?
So back in college, one of my college roommates and I we always talked about money, and it's a topic that nobody talks about, which is a big problem. I'm somebody who believes that we need to do a lot better job in society to teach people about money. I think it has to start in school. I think it has to start in elementary and middle school. I think it's a shame that people graduate from school with all these skills that are mostly irrelevant, and they don't even know how to open a checking account. They don't know what to do with credit cards, and they really don't know how to buy a house. These are skills you've got to exit school with these skills. It's absurd that our education system doesn't teach that stuff. So in college, we were into money, we talked about it, and we said, it'd be really cool if we can buy this apartment building that we're living in. And then we're like, well, we don't have money, we don't know how to do this. It's just not going to happen. So the idea just kind of died there. Fast forward, I'd gotten the real estate license, I dabbled in that, and one day I get a call from my brother who was living in the Midwest, and he said, Josh, I recently bought a couple buildings. Property in the Midwest is really cheap, by the way. So I just bought a couple of buildings, and here's the numbers. This is really great. I know you're interested in figuring out ways to make money, and you should really think about coming down here and getting involved. So I looked at the numbers were fantastic, it all made sense, and I was inspired. I was like, all right, I got to do this. So I got in a plane, flew to St. Louis, and started looking at property. And the property I looked at, I was looking at low-income property in really bad neighborhoods, which the numbers look really good on. The problem is there's a whole lot more that goes with a property like that. There's management headaches, there's tenant issues, there's neighborhood issues that can happen. And so what started to happen was I ended up buying some property, and I found that the properties were great. The numbers were fantastic. I was going to make a killing on these properties if everything went right, but nothing went right. I feel like everything possible that could go wrong went wrong. And it was horrifying. It was really a very, very traumatic experience, and primarily because the people that I counted on to help me out, the people on the ground 2,000 miles away, I was teaching. They were not there for me. They were not doing their job. They were not doing what they were supposed to do. And so I found myself in a position where I needed help. I didn't know where to turn. I needed help. And so I looked at the landscape. Where can I get help? What can I do? I'm 2,000 miles away. I don't know. I knew that market because that's where I went to college, which is why I ended up buying there. And so I started to look around. And what I found was this. I found that there were lots of books on the topic of real estate investing. The challenge with the books on real estate investing was, they were solid. They had information that'll help you get started. They don't have information on all those little questions that pop up that are so unique to your experience, that are so unique to your markets, that are so unique to where you're at. And I was like, okay, well, I can't turn to these books. There were magazines. Same thing, just kind of generic articles. Podcasts, there really weren't podcasts. And there were some radio shows, but really more of the same thing. Finally, there were some internet sites. And so I looked, and I found there were a few communities that existed at the time. Of course, I found a problem with those as well. This is me, right? I always find problems with things. So I look at these communities, and what I noticed was they were, at least it was my perception, that they were in cahoots with the get-rich-quick guys, the late-night TV, the infomercial guys. You can get rich tomorrow, just take my $10,000 course, read my $997 boot camp. Actually, there are a lot more than that. And when I look at this stuff, I'm like, wow, this is a funnel to a bigger upsell, which is a funnel to a bigger upsell. And some of this stuff goes for like $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 that these guys charge people, and they get people caught up in the frenzy of, oh, well, this guy's going to make me rich. I'm going to make all this money. And I'm from New York. Who here's from New York? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about when I say, like, I've got a pretty good bullshit-o-meter, and like my bullshit-o-meter was like off the charts when I looked at all this stuff. I was like, all right, well, I can't trust them. What do I do? So let me take you back really quickly, because in college, 1994, I was a freshman in college, and that was when the internet as we know it, the graphical internet, was born. I was fascinated by it, absolutely fascinated by it. And so I started building websites back then, 94, 95, 96. I mean, they were terrible. But I started building these websites, and so I had that experience. Fast forward, I look around, there's nowhere for me to turn that I can trust, at least in my own mind. And so I said, you know what, let me build my own community. Let me build something where I can get help. I could get answers to the questions that I've got. And let's kind of see what can happen. Now, mind you, I'm teaching special ed high school at the time. I'm doing this on my lunch breaks. I'm doing this nights. I'm doing it weekends. My poor wife, got to witness this guy who is like addicted to his computer, who's just tied to this thing, and that was the birth. And then there were varying phases of the growth of the business. I'm sure you'll ask me.
Yeah. So to build a website, how do you get people there? What was sort of a test or pilot of this to see that it worked and see that it wasn't just a uniquely you problem or question, but that there were legs to it?
Yeah. So I didn't set out to build a business. I didn't set out to do anything special. I set out to solve my problem. And I think that's something that when I see people doing that, I see them generally turn out to be fairly successful because people tend to be passionate when they're trying to solve their own problems. So for me, there was a monster chicken and egg issue here. I'm creating a community site, and I have nobody to go to my community. So what do I do? So when I started the site, I started cobbling together a bunch of resources that I found valuable about varying topics of interest. And then I put together this online forum using open source software. And now I had to get people to come and answer my questions. So I start posting my questions, and I start going to other communities, non-real estate, because I thought it was shady to try and poach from other real estate sites. But I would go to other communities and ancillary markets. Personal finance. I could talk your ear off about personal finance. So I'd go to personal finance communities, web development communities, things like that. And most web forums have an off-topic area. So what I would do is I'd go to the off-topic areas and I'd find any kind of question about something I knew or I could research and on real estate or personal finance. And I would go in there and I would answer the question. Oftentimes it was just the academic answer, but it was an answer enough to get me that visibility. In these communities, you can create a signature on the bottom, and my signature had Josh Dorkin, BiggerPockets, real estate community. Eventually, people would click on that link and come over to the community and see this brand new community, and they would start to answer questions, and other people would ask questions, and little by little. And this is not something that happened overnight. I think we had our first 50 users within 6 months. This took a very, very long time. And I was just hustling and going everywhere I could, every community, and answering questions and giving value, right? So I put out value, I helped people out, and suddenly they started to come to my community and do the same thing. Little by little, it grew, and after about 2 years, I was making enough money through Google Ads, through AdSense, where I could quit my job and afford a car payment. Of course, thank God my wife was still working, and so she could afford to sustain us. But without her supporting me and the business in the early days, we would have shut it down.
So to take us off the trajectory for a second, remind us why it's called BiggerPockets.
It's a good question. So when I was in the entertainment business, one of my good friends, Sean, he was in a really just garbage movie. And as is the case with most up-and-coming actors, we do a lot of garbage projects. And he just played this like shady drug dealer. And so he's like in a bar, he's in a lounge, and I don't know what the whole setting was, the scene was, why they were there, but he reaches into his pocket and he pulls out this just fat wad, and he's like, damn, I gotta get some bigger pockets. And I'm like, I love that. And so I went and registered the name. Now, I registered it back when I was in the entertainment business, and I'm like, I can use this for the entertainment business. And I tried to create a community in the entertainment business, and it failed miserably. But when all this real estate stuff came up, I was like, BiggerPockets, yes. It's all about building wealth, making money. This is it. So it just came from, that connection of drug dealer money, and yeah, maybe I should tell a different story.
No, we like the truth. So looking back as we take ourselves from idea to today, what do you think it is about community building, if it's online, if it's in person, that still resonates, that's still true? What is it that sort of gets that snowball effect of people showing up and being actively engaged and not just audience members, but participatory?
So I think that's the billion-dollar question. It really is. If you ask me what I'm good at, I'd say skiing, and I'd say building a community. Could I go and replicate it for other people? I think I could. I think it would take So BiggerPockets has been around for 12 and a half years. I community built for probably 6 or 7 until I felt like the community had any kind of legs on its own. You can ask my wife. This is 6 or 7 years. I was working 80 to 100 hours a week trying to stimulate a community. So I'm in there all day, all night, asking questions to stimulate conversation, answering questions to make sure that no question goes unanswered. Trying to create a framework by which the community's morals and ethics existed. Always be helpful. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Don't be a dick. I mean, really, no promotion or advertising within the community. These items, as small as they sound, are what separated BiggerPockets from every other platform that I came across. And frankly, they separate us from not only in real estate, but across communities online. Most communities don't set boundaries, don't set rules, and are afraid to disappoint people. And so what happens is, I got yelled at a lot. I got yelled at by a lot because, and people called me a dictator, and they're like, okay, Josh is running his own little empire, as a little guy in his computer thinks he's like, and it's fine, but in order to create a sustainable community, you have to have rules. You have to, because otherwise things will run amok. And people then show up and they see that it's the Wild West, and they're like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to participate somewhere where somebody's going to be a jerk to me. I have a simple question. I need help. I don't need that. I don't have time for that. So those things, the willingness to actually establish those and really piss people off are, I think, for us, what allowed the community to start to grow. And then, things like getting some community managers and getting moderators to come in and, creating a set of rules that they would help enforce and, ensuring that they would also be out there and be helpful. And so the idea was there are no stupid questions, just stupid people? I don't know. There's no stupid questions. And, we're going to do our best to answer everything that we can possibly answer. And, at first we could, and then we couldn't because the volume that came in. And now we get the vast majority of through technology and certain changes that we built allowed us to build a community where the questions are getting answered. And today we get, about 2,000 to 2,500 forum posts a day on the community. So it's crazy. And the value that comes from it is, the number of posts don't matter. What matters are, we're helping people change lives. What matters are the people who are putting in the time to help out are getting value back. We actually just interviewed a guy on our podcast yesterday. He had, I think it was almost 15,000 posts in our community. And I gave him a hard time. I was like, do you have a life? Like, what do you doing? I have 16,000. I've been doing it for 12 years. You've been around for like 3. But he's building a brand. He's building his business. People know that he knows everything about everything. And if you need a guy that knows about this topic, he's the guy you're going to go to. If you need a partner, he's going to be the guy you go to. If you need money, you know he's got it. He's going to be the guy that you go to. So by providing value and time, he's getting it back. And that's the model that has sustained BiggerPockets. Is, we built a place where everybody feels welcome, except the people who are there to, manipulate and, be evil. I don't know. Everybody gets value, and those people who give get. And it's not going to happen the first time. Maybe you'll get a little ego check from like, hey, I just helped this guy. Cool, you got to thank you. That's great. But like over time, as you start to do that, you see the impact of it. And I mean, we have countless stories of people who've built, fantastic businesses on our platform just by giving value to other people.
That's awesome. So we were talking a little bit before this. I didn't realize that BiggerPockets is also a book publisher. BiggerPockets has podcasts. BiggerPockets has itself. You have a YouTube channel. So give us just sort of a framework of all sort of that BiggerPockets touches and how you're accessing your audience.
Sure. Can I rewind and get a quick from like quitting that job and get us forward, just because I think the context helps a little bit. So I quit my job. We moved to Colorado. Yay, Colorado, right? Yeah, good stuff. And of course, get a house. I'm now, entrepreneur of this lifestyle business. I get to work in my boxer shorts. It's awesome, right? Fully, duly employed by myself. Very exciting. I would wake up in the morning and immediately crawl over to my office about 10 feet away, and eat some breakfast and go to the couch and keep working, and I'd be there all day and all night. And probably not the best thing for a relationship, although we've had an amazing relationship. I had 3 kids in the interim while all this was going on, and I'm working out of the house and trying to build this thing, because at some point I realized, you know what, not only am I getting value, but other people are getting value, and I think this thing could have legs. So I start working hard, and like I said before, I'm doing 80, 100 hours a week. We're on year 3 of the business, and I proceeded to do that for the next, 4, 5, 6, oh man, my math is bad. 6 years, the next 6 years, working out of my boxer shorts, on my couch, 80 to 100 hours a week. I did not take days off. So I worked Saturdays, Sundays, Mondays, you get it. I worked every day. I worked holidays, birthdays. I worked when my kids were in the hospital. I worked when my lovely wife was pregnant. I always worked. This is a bad thing. This is not something, I'm not telling you this to brag. I'm telling you, don't do this. This is really stupid. It's bad for your relationship. It's bad for your health. It's bad for your life. Don't do that. But doing those years, those struggles, those years of high highs and just horribly, horribly low lows, and that commitment to turning this into something, and that commitment to, you know what, just because that VC who I talked to get advice on building the business says that it's not going to go anywhere, just because they said that it's not going to go anywhere doesn't mean it's not going to go anywhere. Just because somebody says your idea has no legs doesn't mean it has no legs. Now that said, I had to really, work my behind off in order for this thing to actually end up thriving at some point. But for those 6 years, did okay. Made enough money. My wife eventually quit her job. We were doing all right. We weren't getting rich, but we had built this lifestyle business. Of course, I had no life. So, calling it a lifestyle business, well, Tim Ferriss would obviously smack me around because there was no 4-hour work week happening. I got to a point where I was talking to Julie, and I just broke down and I started crying, and I was like, I can't keep doing this. I cannot keep doing this. I'm miserable. When we travel, I have my damn computer. Every minute of the day, I'm thinking about this thing, and it's got to stop. Something has to change. So I went, found a consultant to help me look over the business, think about what I'm doing. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? We tore the product apart. We tore the business apart. We tore everything apart, and ultimately decided that we were going to not dump the business. Because that was something I was thinking about. I was like, it's time. This is it. I'm 8 years in on this thing. We're making an okay living, but I could probably get a job working for somebody for 40 hours a week and make more money. Why the hell am I doing this? And so, there was a lot of thought that went into that. I mean, really spent a lot of time thinking over my life, my purpose. What am I doing? Does this business, is this what I'm here for? And I ultimately decided to give it another shot. So what we ended up doing was we ended up deciding we would hire somebody to come in and help out. Now, mind you, I bootstrapped this business, right? I've never raised a dollar from anybody. I did not take venture capital. I did not borrow money from a bank. I always, for some reason, I just saw that as a failure, and that's not true, by the way. So it's okay to borrow money. But I didn't want to. And so I hired this first employee, a man named Brandon Turner, who still works for me. He's co-host of our podcast today. And it was like this moment of glory. By the way, he was a member of the community. He was somebody who had provided content for us. So we had a blog, and at first I wrote all the posts on the blog, and then I realized that I didn't have enough time in the week to do that. So I said, is there a way that I could figure out a way to barter with people who know what they're doing, who are active real estate investors, and get them to provide content to me for free in exchange for exposure? And so that was the system we came up with on the blog was, offer exposure in return for content. And, at first it was hard, but once our list started to grow and once people started to get exposure from it, word of mouth started to spread and people wanted to write for us. And so Brandon was somebody who had written for me, and I knew he was very smart. He was up in Washington. And I was like, all right, I'm remote already. I'd been working with a contract developer over the past 6 years. And now that I could work via Skype, I could work remote. Cool. So hire him, and it was life-changing. Almost instantaneously, I went from 80 to 100 hours a week to 80 to 95 hours a week, which was just life-changing. Okay, good. I worked a little less. We still worked really, really hard. But that was the beginning of the next phase of the company, which was, from lifestyle business to startup, at least in my own mind. So that was 4 years ago, and fast forward to today, and a lot has changed. So to your question, and sorry for the long-winded answer, but I thought it might add some value. So we had the forums. The forums eventually became a social network, and lots of just crazy stories in between where, hiring an outsourced firm in California with a team in India to build a website for me that I spent like $15,000 or so on, got back a website 6 months later that didn't work at all. And that was all the money I had. I didn't know any better. I didn't know how to tell them to code because I wasn't a good coder. I'm not a programmer at heart. I'm a hack, and as far as programming goes. And so, I can't look at their code and say, hey, they screwed up here or they screwed up here. I just have to count on these guys to give me what I ask for. And that was a horrifying experience. Horrifying experience. I hope none of you have to go through it. It's really terrible. And I could have quit at that point, but I was like, maybe there's another way to do it. And instead of building this giant website at once, I said, let me piecemeal and start to add little features. And so we went from forum to social network. We went from PHP to Rails, and we actually connected PHP to Rails. For those of you tech guys in here, That's like a big no-no. Don't, intermix your technologies. And it was a hot mess, but it worked. It worked, right? And eventually we got rid of PHP and built our own forums, and we've got the blog, and we're producing tons of content on the blog, which this is before SEO existed, right? The word SEO, like when I built that social network, that was because I wanted to build MySpace, right? So MySpace was hot back in the day, and I wanted to be hot like MySpace, and so I built this failure of a MySpace, and it was just sad. But eventually, so we're producing content, and I'm realizing people are coming because of that content. And eventually, Google, starts, the SEO world starts to grow, and all of us are learning at the same time. Like, hey, don't buy links because Google's going to smack you around. Oh, whoops! But I'm making a lot of money from links. So do I give up the money or the traffic? All these questions that are coming up. But we build the blog, and we is me and again this outsourced guy at this point. We build the blog. We build a member blog platform because hey, not only do we want to have a place where we control the content, but why not build a place where our users can produce content about whatever they want to produce content about? It's going to potentially get us more eyeballs. Let's do that. So we build that. We build all these different products, some of which fail, some of which succeed. After hiring Brandon, one of the first things that we're talking about in marketing is, how else do we build this marketing? We're really good at SEO now. We're really good at building a community. We're getting lots of eyeballs. You know what? Podcasts are cool. Like, young kids are building podcasts. They listen to it. Let's see what we can do. So I thought 6 people would listen to this podcast, and I'd be all 6. So we go and we launch the podcast with no hope of anyone showing up. We send it out to our list, and all of a sudden we get a few thousand listens. I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool. Let's do another one. And up front we committed. We said, we're going to go at least 20, 30 shows before we quit, because that's the one thing that we had learned is no matter what, you've got to commit to something. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to stop because it failed the first time or the second time or the third time. You got to keep going, because if you do quit, you're that one step away from gold, right? You quit right there. So all of a sudden, the podcast starts to take off. And now we've got another medium where people are learning about us. Now, mind you, we had this theory, and the theory was, I like to call it the marketplace theory. And I don't know if you guys know a guy named Pat Flynn, Smart Passive Income. Pat also follows a similar strategy, and it's all about, you want to be where your users are. So there are people who consume content on podcasts. There's people who consume content on the radio. There's people who consume video content on YouTube. There's people who consume it on television, on websites, on mobile, on social media, you name it. So there's all these different channels on Amazon. Where are people? And so we thought, where are people, and how can we get ourselves in front of people in those places? Because at the end of the day, I didn't want to just build a website. I want to build a brand. I want to build a business that is sustainable. I want to build a business that is recognizable. And so the podcast, then, we're talking with one of our users, and he's talking about potentially putting a book together. Like, well, Amazon's one of the biggest search engines in the world. This would be great if we can get on Amazon. Let's do this. Let's do this book. Mind you, before that, I believe we had actually written our own Kindle book, this ultimate guide to real estate, beginner's guide to real estate investing. Put it on Kindle. We were starting to get eyeballs. We're like, well, let's try physical books. Why not? There are people who only buy physical books, who don't go on websites, who don't listen to podcasts, who don't do this. So it's another way to get exposure to our brand. So we put out this book, again, with hopes of like 6 people buying it. And suddenly thousands of people are buying these books. Great, let's put out more books. So that's kind of the birth of the podcast, the birth of the books. Again, YouTube, we started putting out videos. We weren't very good. We've recently gotten a lot better thanks to this guy here, Zach Gwynn.
Can I interrupt real quick? There's a big group of students from CCD that are all entrepreneurs. Can I just let them
Bring them in, yeah. Yeah. Nice job, Zach.
There we go.
Sweet. Hello, welcome. Thank you for coming. But I think that's it. I mean, I think that answers where you were going is, the genesis of all these different things that we do today. And I'm sure you'll ask other questions.
So as you built, to go from idea man and entrepreneur to leader, you now have how many people under your BiggerPockets umbrella?
Between employees, I think we have 25 in Denver, 1 out of state, and then I think we've got around eight or 9 contractors around the world.
Okay, so talk to me a little bit about maybe like relinquishing some of the controls and what it looked like to become a leader of people who you learn to trust to take on some of the tasks to build this business.
It's very hard. It was very hard because I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a control freak, right? I mean, that's who we are. The entrepreneurs don't tend to be the people that grow the companies. They're the ones who get them off the ground. It's a different skill set doing that than managing. Managing's hard. Managing is less creative. It's more about processes. It's more about people. So Brandon was the first hire. Then we hired a few other people. And in the early days, everybody was a generalist. Everybody did everything, and managing them was easy. We all kind of hung out in one office or remotely, and we all just kind of worked together. We were out in Thrive co-work space in Cherry Creek. It was great, good energy, and managing wasn't really a thought. I didn't think about how am I managing people. I just thought, like, what are people doing? I need them to do it. I need to be a good guy. I want them to like working for me. I want them to enjoy the experience. But I'll tell you that for me it was easy because Brandon, my first employee, was actually a BiggerPockets success story. Brandon, when he started working for me, at that point no longer needed a job because he had made enough money in real estate through BiggerPockets that he lived up in Washington in the middle of nowhere, and he didn't need to work. He wanted to work for me, not just because it was any old company, but because my business had built his business. My next guy, Scott Trench, he was like a super fan of BiggerPockets. He came in, it was kind of creepy actually. We always laugh about the story because he was touring around the co-work space, and somebody's like, yeah, and this is BiggerPockets. He's like, BiggerPockets, oh my God, I gotta meet him. And he came in and scared the hell out of me because we've had some, occasional scary users. And so eventually, we got to talk, and the guy's fantastic, one of my favorite people on planet Earth. But to managing, again, the early years, we didn't really have to. And then we started hiring more people, and we had to. I wasn't thinking about it. I wasn't really good at it. And thank goodness, I think I'm a nice guy. I don't know why they stuck around. I think really because those early folks believed in what we were doing. They believed in the mission of BiggerPockets, which is what allowed me to retain those early folks because I wasn't a good manager. I didn't even think about management. I just thought about building. Got to a point where last year we had, 10, 12 people? 12 people. And 50% of my job was now hiring and vetting people. And I was like, mind you, I still am not a manager. I don't know what I'm doing. But I was like, I got to figure this out. I figured everything else out. I probably need to learn how to run a company because you can't just guess at it. So I started studying what other people are doing. I started studying, reading voraciously. I started listening to podcasts, and most importantly, actually, it's a year ago, I think, like this week or next, I hired a head of HR. And I will tell you that that was probably there were lots of tipping points for the business. That was probably one of the biggest, at least for me and my own personal sanity, and also for the health of the organization. And so doing that, being able to do that, and I will tell you that I can't tell young companies enough, you really, really need to think about hiring HR early on. You have to. You have to. People are so important. Like, without people, nothing gets done. And it's always an afterthought in startups. It's always an afterthought. And so if any of you guys are out there thinking about building companies, please think about it. It doesn't have to be employee number 1 or 2 or 3, but you definitely want to be thinking about that early on. Anyway, hired her, and at that point, that was really the beginning of thinking about, we've got to systematize this. I know everything about BiggerPockets. Everything's in my head. And so for him to get anything done, he's got to come to me. Wait, everything flows through me. That's not good for a company. I can't be that guy. That's not okay. In order for us to scale, I got to get out of the way. So as scary as it was, those first employees built trust for me. I learned that I could count on people to do things. And then I started to realize that we can systematize this, and all of a sudden, hand over the reins. And so by last year, the middle of last year, we put together a leadership team, and now there's a brain trust who can make decisions where I don't necessarily need to be there. Obviously, they turn to me for final guidance, but I trust these people enough. I trust that they know and understand the business. They have the best interest of the business at heart, and I'm going to lean on them to be my eyes and ears, and I'm going to get everything the hell out of my brain, and I want them to get everything the hell out of their brain. In fact, everybody's got to get everything out of their brain, because we need to have everything in writing. We need to have systems and processes in order to actually scale this business, because I don't want to just have a company that helps out 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 1 million people. I mean, we've had tens of millions of people exposed to our brand over the years. If we're going to grow that, we're going to have to grow the organization. And so let's be conscious. Let's be conscientious about creating a culture. Let's think about what is culture? Like, what does that mean? Like, I thought it was a bullshit word. Like, honestly, until like a year ago, I thought culture was total bullshit. And then I realized, as we started to get more people, like, wait, this stuff matters. Now, we had a good culture, don't get me wrong, but we set out and said, we want to build a company where people come first, where people matter. And so we started focusing on, how do we build a culture? What does that mean? How do we grow it? What matters? Started thinking about core values, putting together core values, and really just focusing on that as an integral aspect of the business, as important, if not more, than the product itself. And I think that's really allowed us to thrive over the last year. And I'll shut up and let you ask another question.
It sounds like there's been a lot of change in a short period of time.
Yes.
So as you look ahead, what specific goals, objectives, growth do you hope to achieve? And where's BiggerPockets really going with all that?
So, at the end of the day, I can talk about numbers. I got a lot of numbers in my head. I can talk about the number of unique visitors we have, the video views. Last March we had 1.6 million monthly unique visitors to the platform. I think we're at 28 to 29 million total listens to the podcast. Our average podcast within the first week gets over 100,000 listens. We just recorded show 222. We do a show a week. We sell thousands and thousands of books. Like, I want to do more of that. I want to grow. I want to grow this business. At the end of the day, why? The question is why, right? Is it greed? Is it like, hey, I want to do all that? I've got a successful business, right? So why grow it? For me, I think the answer is going to be very different than for a lot of people. I think for a lot of people, the answer is greed. It's not bad. It's okay. It's okay to be greedy. Greed is good. Gordon Gekko? No. But for us, in the hard year, And there wasn't just one. There wasn't just 5. There weren't just 10. There were a lot. There were a lot. During those difficult times, what kept me going was the feedback from our users. I would get stories from people who would say, Josh, you changed my life. Now, I was working a shitty job. I hated my boss. I had no hopes for the future. Somehow came across you guys because I was interested in real estate just randomly. And fast forward 2 years, I work for myself. I don't have that shitty boss, and I'm making more money, and the future looks bright. I was getting those on a regular basis. We get those now on a daily basis. It's an honor, and it is weird and hard for me to talk about. There are not a lot of companies, at least that I see, who fundamentally change and transform people's lives. And we, somehow through stubbornness and years of, just busting my behind, I fell upon this thing that really, really is helping people fundamentally transform their lives. So where are we going? I want to do that to more people. I open this up talking about education. I open this up talking about how, I think, financial literacy is fundamentally important to everybody, and we are not taught that in school, and we all have to go out and learn it on our own. And so I think it becomes the mission of BiggerPockets going forward to help people become more financially literate, to help people, and not just through real estate. If we can transform somebody's life and help them learn about, how to be smart with their money, how to raise their credit score, how to get out of debt, how to have enough money to sustain them at retirement, how to not live a life where they're a slave to a job until they're 65 before they can actually enjoy their life. We've been programmed this because, the generation before us, that's what it was. You worked till you're 65, you worked 1 or 2 jobs, and then, you died. And hopefully you passed a couple things on to your kids. Well, yeah, they passed on that we should do the same thing. But, this next generation is smarter. Well, I'm Gen X. We had a whole group of you guys walk in, the millennials. Sorry, got to call you out. Millennials are much smarter than we are. A lot of them are deserving of the lazy tag. Most of them are not. Most of them just see the world differently than we do. They don't want to work till they're 65 and then drop dead. They want to enjoy. They want to enjoy their life. And so, it's funny because 4-Hour Workweek I mentioned before, I half liked it, half hated the book. I think there's a lot of nonsense in it, but I think there was a lot in it that I really got out of it. And for me, it was, life is too short. Life is too short. You can't just, we're not here just to work. Work is a means to an end, and that end is actually living a fulfilling life, being there for your families. And so that's actually our top core value at BiggerPockets is family above everything. And we mean that. If somebody at the company has a family issue, go deal with it. If your kid needs to go to the doctor, go take them to the doctor. If you need to go run some errands, go run some errands. We're going to treat you like grown-ups. We believe that, you have the capacity to get things done. So you work a couple hours, outside of the office. That's fine. We trust you until you violate that trust, right? Thus far, we really haven't had any problems with that. Family above everything. I put my family first. I realized that over the years, they weren't really first. Even though I always thought they were, they weren't. So if my family is number one, if I set rules and constraints by which I live my life around my company, I should expect the same of my people. And I do mean that. I wake up in the morning. Most entrepreneurs I know, they wake up, they go on their computer, they start working. Then, they'll eat some food with their kids while they're half working on their cell phones, doing all this stuff, and then they take them to school, come back, they get home from work and they're on their phones and they're on their computers while their kids are around at the dinner table, you name it, right? Who here is guilty of it? Yeah, right? So I said, that's not okay. It's not okay for me, at least, right? And so I wake up in the morning, I don't work until I'm in the office. My mornings are for my kids. They're for my family. I go to work. When I come home from work, until my children are asleep, I do not work. A little tiny bit of, social media here and there, because that wraps around my life. But like, dinner table, phones are away. I mean, while, family time is family time. And I'm like 98% good at holding that boundary. And so, by the way, the 80 to 100 hours a week, I probably work 40 to 45 hours a week now. And sorry, I went off on a tangent, but your question is, where are we going? I think all this stuff is important for people to hear. I think it's important for people to learn. I think my job is to, not only through BiggerPockets, but even outside of BiggerPockets, talk to people, help transform people's lives. I was excited for the first 5 users. I was excited for the first 10. I looked up at these other communities that existed in the early days. I was like, oh my God, maybe one day I could be as big as them. And then I blinked and I was like, oh wait, I'm bigger than them. And then I blinked and I'm bigger than the next guy. And suddenly, like, we've got this platform, 730,000 members. We have BiggerPockets meetup groups around the country, around the planet. There's like a Seoul, Korea BiggerPockets meetup group with like hundreds of people who meet every month because of our platform. Like, that's crazy. It's crazy to me. But it happens because our mission is to change lives, and we do change lives, and I want to do more of it. I never thought it would be as big as it is, and now I'm like, oh man, the world's my oyster. If we can do that, why not a radio show? We should have a radio show. We didn't think we could survive in a podcast. We've got to thrive in podcasts. Let's do a radio show. What about a TV show? What about a network? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not like planning on doing it, but like the way we've grown has been to try stuff, not be afraid to try stuff, and not be afraid to fail, because I failed. Man, oh man, I failed a lot. And I continue. We fail all the time, but that's okay. So we want to reach as many people as we humanly can with this message, and we want to reach as many people as we humanly can with the knowledge and information and the networking and the tools that BiggerPockets provides.
Do we have time for audience questions? Okay. I think we're gonna see if, do we want to?
I'll take it.
Sorry if I rambled.
Hi, thanks for being here and sharing your story.
Hi.
My name is Maya. I'm a developer, so I have a couple tech-related questions. You mentioned that you spent that $15,000 to outsource your site and it didn't work. So one, I'm wondering, what would you have done differently? How would you build out that side of the business looking back? Two, I'm just curious how many of your employees are female, and are any of your female developers?
Last question, yes. Second to last question, I think we're like 46% female, something like that. We just had 4 new hires. Well, 5 new hires. One starts in a couple of weeks. I think 4 out of the 5. No, 3 out of the 5 are female. So yeah, I mean, we definitely focus on diversity, absolutely. We need more female coders. Actually, we need a lot more coders, period, in Colorado, because the last 4 out of the last 5 hires have all been out of the state. We got lucky with an H-1B that we just closed on, thank goodness, right before the deadline. But the first question is what I would have done differently in that early stage. Now, what would I have done differently knowing what I know today, correct? I think what I would have done is I would have done what I ended up doing, which is I went to what's today called, it was called Odesk, it's called Upwork today, to find my first contractors. And so I would have tested out developers on a small project. So, in those years, the way I figured out how to hire people and find people who knew what they were doing, because again, I couldn't validate their code. I couldn't decide whether what they were doing was good, except for the final product, which, inevitably is going to look good, but, there's always wonky bugs that happen. I would have had them do small tasks, very small projects, and see if they had their chops, and then put them on bigger and bigger projects until, I fully trusted them. And that's how, the guy I mentioned, I've had a contractor. He worked with me for years, then he left, went to Microsoft, came back, worked for me again, left for another company, ended up coming back to me again. On and off for like 8 years, I've had this guy. He's in the UK, and it's, fantastic relationship. But I've worked with, from outsource perspective, one of the years that he left to go to Microsoft, I think I worked with 13 developers in a period of like less than a year and a half, because I couldn't find a single one to cut it. They just couldn't do it. It was wild. Does that answer it? Does that help?
Hey Josh, first thanks. Your story resonated on multiple levels. I like the bullshit here too. So definitely stealing that. One question I think I have as I'm building my own team, it's me and one other individual. And one of the things you touched on, which was really important to you, was the culture piece. And the part that you get the most out of hearing from your users, that you're making a genuine impact in their lives. And for me, that's super important as well. My biggest concern is as I scale up and grow people, get salespeople, I'm very concerned about maintaining what I and my partner believe is the best way to do that.
Yeah.
What were some of the frustrations you may have found in scaling with the culture and the idea that you have in your mind, and getting the rest of the team to follow that? And then also, just really, what were some of the things that resolved that, or maybe you didn't have any, and how did you not have to face those issues?
So, at my core, I'd like to think of myself as a nice guy. I'd like to think of myself as somebody who tries to treat people well. That's just who I am. So as I hired, that was something that was really important. Made a hire, was not a good hire. Thank goodness they left. Really taught me the no asshole rule, which I cannot press upon you enough. Because it's really easy, and for those of you who don't know what the no asshole rule is, we will not hire an asshole. Period. I don't care how skilled you are. I do not care how qualified you are for this position. If you are an asshole, you will not work for my company. And if you work for my company and you turn out to be an asshole, you will not be there very long. That is the no asshole rule. It's a fantastic rule. It's a fantastic rule because it eliminates the drama. Now, it's really easy to say, hey, we're not going to hire assholes. Like, how do you know that somebody's an asshole? It's hard. Time. Well, so again, the early years, I don't know. I was trying to hire good people who I trusted, and mostly got it right. I've had, I believe, 2 bad hires over the last 30 hires, well, including contractors, 30, 40 people. I've had, I think, 2 bad hires. But we learned from those 2 hires. Learned a lot. And we learn from everything we do. Like everything we do, we examine with a microscope. Whether it's hiring, whether it's development, whether it's marketing, we analyze, we really are a data company. I mean, we look at the data on everything that we do. But I think one of the biggest things that we did was create a process. And so, our process, it's a multi-step process. First, you vet the resume. Depending on the job, we always give them a task, some kind of task to see if they have the skills and they lied on their resume. If that passes, there's going to be a phone screen. If the phone screen works, then there's going to be an in-person screen with HR. If that works, the manager is going to screen them. If that works, we now do what's called the family interview. Family interview is we get, what's 5 people? Yeah, I think 5 people together in a room with this potential employee. And we already know they can do the job. So this is not about do they have the skills? This is about, are they an asshole? Is this somebody that I want to spend time with? Is this somebody that, is a good person? We want people with different interests. We want people with different likes. That's what creates a diverse community at our office. That's creates an interesting environment for us to work in. Is having diversity, male, female, black, white, it doesn't matter, gay, straight, religious backgrounds, it doesn't matter. Like, we want everybody. Obviously, it's illegal to think otherwise, but like, we really, really mean that. And the family interview is fun because it's literally people peppering you with like, what's your favorite food? What did you do last Sunday? And do you like it when somebody stands in an escalator in front of you, or do you want to knock them over? Like, it's the time for obviously all the pre-vetted legal questions that are kind of fun questions to figure out, like, what kind of books do you like to read, and who are you as a person? And then finally, if they get through that, and obviously after that, it goes back to the manager and it goes back to HR and everybody's still signed on, then it comes to me. And I'm probably going to step out at, when we get to maybe 50 employees, because, at this point, I don't necessarily, even today, I don't think I necessarily need to know to be vetting because I trust the process. I still want to know everybody who comes in. At some point, I'm not going to be able to. But the rule that we set is, unless everybody is 100%, we will not hire that person. If there's anybody who has any reservations at all, they're not coming on the company. So it's all or none. It's all or none. Does that help?
It's a great answer. It's a thorough process to mitigate any issues that may arise. So,
yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Hi, Josh. Thank you for
Hi.
being here today. I know you said you bootstrapped early in the company year, so I'm wondering how you financed your growth. You're still bootstrapping if you ever took funding. And then if you were actively investing in real estate, like while you were building.
Good questions. Good questions. So I never took money. I have never borrowed money. I financed the company really through the first Google ads that I put on the site. I remember that first check, which was like 17 cents or something, and I was ecstatic about it. I was like, yeah, I'm making money. That was it. I was working a job. My wife, thereafter was making money, so I was able to kind of use that and plow that kind of back towards the business itself. Now, I've certainly perseverated over the years. Should I raise money? I've talked to money people. We still talk to money people all the time. I think it's just a smart thing to do. But we're profitable. Hopefully we might end up on one of these lists that CoBiz Mag is putting out on fast-growing companies. I don't know. Hopefully, but we are. I think the key was being smart about money. Far too many people go and raise millions of dollars or less, and they're like, "Woohoo! I won the lottery!" Right? And they don't know how to manage it, and they burn through it really, really fast. And it puts a clock on you when you raise money. You've now got, not only do you have a boss, and most people don't realize that. They're like, oh yeah, they're a money partner. No, that's your boss. If you do not provide them with the returns that they're looking for, you're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your company. So you better damn be sure that you're ready to raise money. So I've gone back and forth, never have needed to. Potentially in the future, we may need to if we're looking at things like potential acquisitions. We're talking about different things where it may need to come into play, but not on the short-term radar. And I forgot the other part of your question.
Were you actively investing in real estate?
Good question. So I was for the first number of years, and then I got to a point where I was working 80 to 100 hours a week on BiggerPockets. There's not a lot of time in there outside of my family to be actively investing in real estate. So I completely got out, and there's not a day where I'm not itching to get back in. But today I still don't feel like I personally have the bandwidth to get back in directly. Now I'm looking at working individually with different companies, potentially giving money to folks who are looking for financing or looking for money for deals, looking at different hedge funds and things like that, and through the stock market to invest in real estate. So I'm still in real estate, just I'm not out there like buying individual houses to deal with tenants, toilets, and the joys that come with all that. It's really fun. Any other questions? Hi. Shout it out.
How much percentage of the site is commercial? It's been a while since I've been on, and I used to follow you very
Awesome.
strongly at the beginning, and it's been a couple of years, so I'm just curious about the percentage of commercial real estate firms.
I don't, as a percentage, I can't answer you. We got lots and lots of commercial people on the platform, and we interviewed a guy yesterday who's, for our podcast, that's what he does. I mean, we've got, 700, like I said, 730,000 members. There's financiers. There's, people who are thinking about investing in real estate. There's commercial brokers. There's, you name it, contractors. There's definitely value for somebody like you to be on the platform. Again, because, whether it's helping out somebody who's new, who's thinking about getting into commercial real estate and finding clients by doing that, or whether it's, learning yourself things, because frankly, if anyone says they know everything, steer far away, especially in real estate. I've done 200-something interviews with 200-something people. I've learned more from people who've done their first deal than guys who've done their 500th deal. And so, that's, at least for me, like our podcast is one of the most fun things that I do because I get to talk to people and hear their story and learn from them. And, it's exciting because, hey, I'm really good at single-family houses. Well, but I know nothing about mobile home parks. This guy just talked for an hour and a half about mobile home parks. Let me go dig in on the site about mobile home parks. And suddenly I'm like, wait a second, that totally fits in with my lifestyle. That totally fits in with what I'm looking for. So I would say, there's definitely a space for you. And just on what I just talked about, one of the things about real estate that's I think is so exciting is it doesn't matter who you are, how old you are, what your socioeconomic status is. Yeah, unless you're really, really in trouble. Actually, that's not true. If you're really, really financially strapped, there's still ways to actually make money in real estate. It's all about hustling and using your time. But there's no one path for any one person. You're going to go a different path than you, because you guys have different finances, you guys have different family status, you guys have different knowledge, different skill sets. And so there's not one single path for different, and everybody. Despite what the get-rich-quick guys will tell you, buy my system, you will be rich. You find your own path. And I think that's the thing that we really focus on is trying to help people find the path that works best for them, for who they are, for what they want, for what their goals are, and help them to find the success that they're looking for. Last question, I guess.
Thanks. Love your platform, very informative. I was a Carlton Sheet guy back in the day, so what you have is way beyond that. But two questions. One is your corporate sponsorships. Can you share a story about when you received your first one? And then the second one, have you considered kind of doing an Amazon thing and having a cloud system yourself where you sell your platform, forum platform, to other companies that may want to use your same deal?
Good. Thank you for asking. So the second question was on the cloud thing. I've actually had I've had a number of people who've approached me and said, "Hey, your platform is awesome. Like, we'd love to, utilize it." It's not the business that I'm in today. It's certainly something we've talked about, but it's not a core focus right now. I'm in the focus of building the platform for people to use versus building the platform for customers to buy access to. I think that would fundamentally alter our model, and it would fundamentally alter, I believe, the way that we ran the company, and I don't know that it fits in where we're going today, at least. And your first question, I forget it. Anyone? Oh, corporate sponsor. Back in the day, 10 years ago, we originally made money through Google Ads. So we slapped up ads and random ads would show up. And I very quickly realized that you have to vet those ads and filter those ads, at least that we needed to. Because if I've got a platform about real estate investing that is all about people not getting caught up in the upsell and the pitch and that kind of guru nonsense, and I'm making money selling ads to those guys, I'm kind of violating my own thing, aren't I? So though in the early days, I said, well, when I realized those ads were appearing on the site, I was like, wait, I got to stop this. And we can't sell ads to those folks. Honestly, I don't remember who the first sponsor was, but I believe it was an ad on the site, and they bought on a CPM basis, cost per 1,000 impressions, and they bought a bunch of ads, and I don't think they came back. Maybe they did. I don't remember. Again, everything we've done, we've had to learn. Like, we failed at advertising until we got good at it. We failed at everything until we got good at it. Failed at paid memberships until we got good at it. We failed at everything. So, but we tried. And so, today we sell ads. We sell ads on the platform, although we're trying to peel those back as much as possible to improve the user experience of the platform itself. We have ads in our newsletter, which goes out to hundreds of thousands of people per newsletter 3 times a week. And we sell ads on the podcast. But we have other streams of revenue that come in. And that was a big thing for us also, is let's make sure that we create a platform with a diverse set of revenue streams, because that creates a stronger business. Now, the funny thing about that is that I've talked to folks who buy and sell businesses. I've talked to people who value businesses, and they say, well, why are you doing this? Don't you, just build this kind of company. I say, well, but if this happens, this all disappears. If I can diversify who I am and what I've built, I'm going to be a lot stronger. And so, if the book business doesn't do that well, then memberships will make up for it. If the membership business doesn't do as well, then the advertising, sponsorships, lead gen, you name it, all these different streams. We want to be as diversified as we humanly can, because I think that strengthens you as an organization. And it creates a place where, your employees aren't like, oh man, you guys screwed up on the memberships, all of a sudden I'm out. Well, we're still alive because we've got all these other streams that help us to sustain the business.
If I could get one more question in here, just to kind of balance off that one. Scott Trench wants to know, can you tell us about your vision that education should be free, and how that can sometimes be at odds with easy ways to make money? How has sticking to that core principle helped BiggerPockets over the long run? And how have you felt when you've had to turn down that revenue?
By the way, that's a total plant question. Scott was my second or third employee. And by the way, Scott has a book coming out. It's called Set for Life. And it is all about all the stuff I've kind of talked about with, building financial wellness, really focused primarily on you guys, millennials. How to cut back on your expenses, how to get jobs that help you make more money, and how to be smart with your capital, doing things like house hacking. Instead of buying that first house, buying a duplex, triplex, fourplex that you could live in, rent out the other units to other people, and kind of live for free or even make money and get experience in real estate. The book's awesome. It's coming out. It's called Set for Life. But Scott's question was, so I had to plug. Because the fundamental foundation of BiggerPockets was, I want to create a place where people don't have to be exposed to that constant pitch, that constant upsell, the kind of get-rich-quickie guys always trying to pitch. I said early on that we will not sell on the website, we will not sell access to content. Content is always going to be free on the platform. And so, when we went and created paid accounts, well, hey, we could create, these exclusive webinars for our paid members, and we can put out videos for our paid members. No, we're not going to do that. But we can make a lot more money doing that. People will pay us for that. In fact, they're telling us they want us to do that. Sorry, we can't do that. That's a very difficult decision But by setting the groundwork, by setting the rules and saying, this is the company that we are, this is who we are. We do not sell this information. I want to democratize the real estate information space. I want to democratize personal finance information. I want anybody and everybody, no matter who they are, to be able to access this. Because you know what? I didn't like that for me to go and learn, I had to pay some guy, thousands of dollars. I didn't pay them, but I didn't like that I would have had to pay them. So I said, we're not going to do that. And we're going to create a place where access is free. Now, yes, we have books. You can buy books. Does that kind of countermand it? I don't think it does. I think, it's just another medium by which people can can access information and want to access it. And it's a book, We're not, but on the site, on a regular basis, users, people on the team are like, hey, this is a good idea. And then we stop, we examine it. We're like, yeah, but you're now charging for content. So the answer is always no. We will not do that. So by knowing who you are as a company, by understanding your values as a business, and by sticking to them, and you damn better stick to them, because if you don't, you're going to have a revolt from your users. You're going to have a revolt from your customers. And we've seen a lot of that happening. Happens all the time. Stick to your guns, stick to who you are, and people are going to love you for it. Thank you, Scott, for asking.
Great note to end on. I want to thank you, Josh, for coming today and speaking to the Commons community. It's great to
thank you
hear
for having
your stories with some energy and some passion behind it. Thank you to Gigi for the interview and asking some questions. And thanks to all of you for coming to the Commons today. You're welcome to stay and introduce yourself to someone new. You can be in this space for as long as you'd like, and there may be a round left, but I kind of doubt it. So thank you so much. Enjoy your afternoon. Glad to have you back.
Introduce yourself to someone you don't know right now. Seriously. It'll change your life.